Yup, this is me, Leah, finally awakening from my cocoon. I am in my 30s, a millennial with many a failed relationships. You can relate, right? Anywho, I swore off dating after my last nasty breakup and have been on a healing journey, which I have to admit has been pretty awesome so far. This somehow worries my friends and family who are persistently trying to set me up. So today, I finally gave in to the pressure and accepted to go on a date with the guy my friends believe to be my match made in heaven. So, here goes my worst date ever. Saddle up, boys and gals, you are in for a ride. The restaurant was a symphony of awkwardness, each note a cringe. It started with a text from Dan, running 15 minutes late, sorry. 15 minutes quickly turned into 30, 30 into 45. By the time he finally waltzed in, hair a mess, and breathing like he'd just run a marathon, I was halfway through my breadbasket and contemplating a career change. Leah, so sorry, he exclaimed, his voice booming in the otherwise hushed atmosphere. People turned, and I swear the maitre d' gave me a look that said, "Honey, get out now." "No problem," I lied, pasting on a smile that was starting to feel like a frozen mask. Liam's lateness wasn't the worst of it, not by a long shot. He launched into a rambling explanation about being trapped in a car wash with a rogue sprinkler system. I tried to follow, but his frantic hand gestures and the way he kept repeating the suds, they were relentless, made it hard. We finally ordered, and that's when the culinary chaos began. Liam, who had proudly declared himself a gourmand, proceeded to dissect his risotto with the precision of a surgeon. He picked out the mushrooms with his fork, holding them up to the light like tiny, suspect aliens. "These little guys, I'm not sure about them," he'd mutter, before carefully placing them on the edge of his plate. His conversation, if you could even call it that, was a roller coaster of tangents. One minute he was pontificating about the proper way to compost. The next he was describing in excruciating detail the near-death experience he had with a particularly aggressive squirrel in his backyard. He even started humming a tune during my attempt to tell a story about my recent promotion at work. It wasn't a catchy tune, mind you, but a series of discordant notes that sounded suspiciously like a dying cat. But the peak of this Everest of awful dates came with the arrival of the wine. Liam, apparently an expert in all things fermented, proceeded to sniff, swirl, and slurp his glass with theatrical flair. Then he declared, "This vintage has a certain je ne sais quoi, like the breath of 1,000 forgotten grapes." Before I could even process that, he leaned forward conspiratorially and whispered, "You know, Leah, I can tell you're different. You have an aura, and if we fuck right now, there's a 50% chance our child will be smart." He gestured vaguely towards my bosoms. Listen, at this point I was flabbergasted, bamboozled, and simply too numb to speak or react. The finale came with the bill. After a dramatic sigh about the outrageous prices, Dan pulled out a crumpled wad of cash, meticulously counting each note under the dim light. He then announced with an air of calculated generosity, "I'll cover the main course. You get the wine." My portion of the bill was, naturally, significantly more than his. I stared at the numbers, a mixture of disbelief and burgeoning rage bubbling in my chest. I paid the exorbitant price, leaving the change as a silent, "I'm never seeing you again" message. As we stumbled out of the restaurant, Dan, oblivious to the smoldering fire within me, said with a bright, hopeful smile, "So same time next week?" I looked at him, at his disheveled hair, his mud-stained shoes, and the scattering of risotto left on his chin. A single word escaped my lips, laced with the weight of 1,000 bad dates. Absolutely not. And with that, I hailed a cab and escaped into the night, vowing to never again trust any recommendation from friends and family. Was this the worst date ever? Absolutely. But it was also the catalyst for a new personal rule. If they talk to their food, run for the hills. And if they mention an aura, double the distance. I needed a stiff drink, a long bubble bath, and a good therapist. And maybe, just maybe, a new dating app. One with a mandatory questionnaire about squirrel-related trauma and the proper pronunciation of risotto.